Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Today we thought we would dedicate this particular show to women out there who decided to become entrepreneurial by starting their own businesses. But probably one of the deepest frustrations that women face, especially still this day and age, is that they earn less than men. In fact, it's very few women that earn 6- or 7-figure incomes when it comes to their business. The question is why? I mean, after all, we were all born with pretty much the same tools to go out in the world and make our way and see our dreams come true. Joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program today is someone who can help us perhaps change this state of mind as well as affairs. We're going to discover that money is known as emotional currency, especially when it comes for women. And our guest joining us has 8 holistic principles that allow women to overcome deep-seated blocks to pay forward their own success and live the lives of their dreams. The book is known as Money, Manifestation, and Miracles. It's a guide to transforming women's relationship with money. And our guest joining us on the Beyond 50 radio program today is financial and business coach Mariflor Toniato. Mariflor, thank you for joining us here on the program.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be with you.
Well, we love excitement, especially when it comes to running businesses, but I'll tell you, it's exciting until we get into the trenches and realize we got to keep doing this day after day after day, and that illusion seems to fade away fairly quickly, doesn't it?
Well, it can for some people, and the trick is to really do what you love and then find a way to help others through that work.
Now, how did you get started as a coach? Where did your awareness come for all this, where you came to do what you started doing?
Well, for me, I started as a coach about 9 years ago, and I was working as an executive here in Canada, and people had always said to me, "You'd be a great coach. You've got all the skills and so forth." So I, finally did do the whole certifications and trainings and so forth. And then I started to work with women when I started out as a life coach originally. And then I extended that into business coaching as well. And then I started to see this pattern of women and either something was happening with their income or that they weren't progressing or they were feeling stuck in their business. And it had something to do with money. So it was either helping to move them forward or not. And so I began to really look at ways to help them. And then I began to develop programs around things like charging what you're worth and, how to get to the next level of accelerating your income and so forth. And then I found out that it wasn't just this, just being practical with money, but it was really the emotions and the mindsets and belief around money. So it was around the relationship with money. And, something that I, as a woman entrepreneur, also felt when I began my business, even though I had had a lot of success in the past. And so I really wanted to create this because I want to help change the current state of affairs for women. And when you introduced the topic that women have lower figures in terms of income levels and there's a wage gap and just lower representation, for instance, in corporate leadership or in politics, I just wanted to help change the course and the state of affairs for women. And I think that this a step-by-step guide is basically a great resource to help get it started.
Completely agree with you. I know that when you think about something you just said earlier, I remember reading in your book, about the emotional mindset that we have around money, especially women. But I'd like to clue right in on one right here because I think it's a great example to start with, and that is knowing what we charge. What are we worth? What do we think our services are really at? And you gave a wonderful example, for instance, of a woman who was, I guess, call her a therapist coach, who basically was giving away the farm and coaching her friends for free, and, it kind of went on and on and on. Now, let's talk about, that's a real tough one, how you decide, well, what do I charge for my services, where people will, for instance, decide they want to do business with me, because I think that's a really interesting one there.
Yes, it is. And and it really will depend on a number of factors based on what your business is, what your service or product is, and looking at your background in terms of the specialty or expertise that you have, the niche that you say it in the U.S., sorry, niche, that you have for your type of business, and then taking that into consideration of what the market can also bear. Now, one of the things that I say to when I'm coaching women and even men actually is to start looking at, if you do provide services, start looking at putting it together in packages as opposed to charging by the hour. And because when you are able to put something in a package, there's kind of more options for people to choose from. And there's, little bonuses that you can add to it that make it a more valuable option for people. And so when I work with people around this, it's really taking all of those different aspects that I just talked about and really making it easy for that person to feel like I'm being rewarded in a great way for the value that I'm providing. So there has to be that alignment, because you're the one that's going to be saying, when people say, oh, what's your fee or what's your rate, you're going to be the one that's going to be talking about it. So you have to be feeling good about it. You have to be feeling like this is a win-win situation, what I'm offering you.
And that's so true. And in fact, I found this to be a really unique phenomenon. And I'm sure you experienced this, so agree or disagree with me in your experience. But it's really an unusual phenomenon. Like, the less you charge people and overserve, the more you find yourself servicing them. Now, it seems like when you charge a lot more, apparently they must expect more, and you seem to serve them still at a reasonably excellent level, but then you have to seemingly service them less. And I find that kind of funny. Like, I don't care, just send me, whatever the bill is and they pay it, versus the other ones are just hounding you, sort of like that discount idea at restaurants or something.
Yeah, and you're right about that, Daniel, because there's actually, we feel it. We can't see it, but there is that energetic aspect to it. There's almost like when you're right about the whole discounting and all of that, it's almost as if people will feel it as well, and they can't maybe even put their arms around it, but there's a feeling that it puts forward that somehow you're not feeling as positive or as in tune with that pricing or what it is that you're doing, and so it's really, really interesting, the whole mindset that goes into it, too, and charging what you're worth. And another interesting aspect of that, it's all really just energetic, isn't it? In that when you are in alignment and you're on your path to be doing what it is you're doing, and you're serving through the gifts and talents that you have and the expertise that you have, you really are, when you're charging more and charging what you're worth, what it actually does is it sends a signal to the person that, there's skin in the game, if you will. They're going to say, I'm paying, it puts them into attention, I'm paying this great money, so I'm going to make sure that I step up and I do what I need to do and learn what I need to learn so I can get to the next level.
Mariflor, let me hit you right on that. You're absolutely right there. It's funny when you do the discount, or can I, do a test run for free, I say, why people fail in business when they take on those kind of clients is simply because, just like you said, they don't have a stake. There's nothing to lose. But, boy, you stick it to them. You say, no, look, if you want my services, it's going to run you $500 to make sure we take care of business. Then these people step up and go, okay, what do I need to do? And you begin leading them, which is exactly the kind of relationship you want.
Yeah, exactly. And here's another thing that I always get my clients to practice, too, is if it feels like a big and you're not used to it, to saying a new fee or a new rate, practice in front of the mirror. Say it and then don't say anything at all. My fee is X, and then don't say anything at all, and be okay with that silence, because we tend to want to fill the silence so that we have to prove that we can charge that. And meanwhile, the person receiving it is just processing the information, right? So
Right.
let the silence be okay.
Well, there's and in the rule of negotiation, too, is you throw the offer out there and stay quiet, because in the rule of negotiation, the first one to speak loses. As a way of looking at it, that is.
Yeah, true. It is a way of looking at it. And so I just find this really fascinating topic. And the fact that, there's people that, depending on their relationship, the nature of the relationship with money, money is a very uncomfortable topic for a lot of people. And one of the reasons why I wanted to write the book is I wanted to get the conversation out there so that anybody who is feeling not so empowered with money can say, wow, there's this great resource. My friends and colleagues are talking about it, or others are feeling more empowered. And I also say that even though the book is written for women, men can really find value in reading it as well.
Well, as a man, I can certainly attest that that's absolutely true. In fact, I remember years ago when I got involved with insurance sales, there was a suggestion by somebody who had been in the business for 30-plus years. He says, if you really want to understand the language of servicing people through sales, he says, read the book, Learn How to Sell to Women. And he says, simply because you're selling the emotional benefits. Now, think about that. Everything we offer, whether it's goods or services, is really, truly based on fulfilling an emotional need.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Oh, I would absolutely agree with that. And to add to that, Daniel, is that in the U.S., 85% of any consumerism is done by women.
Right. Yeah, especially when it comes to the big ticket things like, what happens with their parents as they age, and, a lot of the things that we talk about as well. Yeah, now that we're on the subject of emotions here, let's go ahead and cover some of the ones you talk about in your book, because as you were saying, when you get to that point where a person decides, for instance, maybe they want to upgrade their fee, charge a little bit more, and they feel uncomfortable about doing that, one of the suggestions that you were making was kind of look in the mirror and just say, well, my new fee is this, and then stay in the silence. But more importantly, too, because you really address this, and this is an area I'd really like you to expound on, is take a look and examine what is that feeling coming up for you when you say, I decided to increase my fees by $100 an hour, let's just say. Yeah. And that uncomfortable feeling, and examine, what is it about this feeling that makes me uncomfortable? Where does it come from? When do I remember first having? And do an inquiry. So talk about how you go into that sort of an examination role from your book. Yes.
So first of all, I really actually talk about the fact that we need to understand our financial starting point, and we need to take stock of our relationship with money. And, the questions that you were just posing there is actually really true. For if you look at the pattern and in your behavior of any kind of money transactions that you have, those are all based on some sort of belief from either the past or the present, and from some sort of a background. So when you are dealing with money or making decisions, we know that it's very much an emotional process when we do anything around money. But the thing is, you really have to understand, okay, what is the pattern that I'm seeing here that I'm not happy with? Is it usually the five key emotions, or four key emotions that I talk about, is fear around money, or feeling of guilt, or feeling of anger, or even feelings of shame. And so fear is the most common emotion that we have, not just about money, but anything that there's a change around. So that's usually a big one, Daniel. And there was a study done in 2013 of Women in Power study in the U.S. And it was really interesting because on households that had more than $200,000 in income, women there said that they still fear that they could become a bag lady someday, which was a really interesting thing to think about. Yeah. So I found that fascinating. It's because of fearing that you having security and safety is huge for women.
Sure.
So that's why that kind of fear would come up. Now,
and
there's
for those
also
that would disagree with you, well, think of all the girls out there looking for sugar daddies. Huh? Just kidding.
See, this is if you think about it too, the other flip side of that is women will sometimes stay in situations and jobs and relationships that aren't really serving them or letting them feel empowered, but it has some sort to do with security, right? So that message around security. And then there's also the guilt aspect of that is sometimes women will feel really guilty that they're spending on themselves rather than their other people, and sometimes they can get depleted in that way. And then there's the deeper thing for people is the whole notion of shame regarding money, because I think that's the most difficult one to endure because it cuts to the very core of who you are. And it's really based on feeling that you're not lovable or not good enough. And so mostly if anybody has ever gone through the feeling of having bankruptcy or being close to being bankrupt, I mean, that is really one of those feelings of shame or even losing a lot of money. Now, anger, too, is really interesting because people may not even be angry specifically around money, and they could be angry about other people as well. But the energy really of being angry, it cuts you off from everything, like emotionally and physically from others, and therefore that's what I call anger can get in the way of you having more abundance and prosperity. And I've actually done a lot of exercises with my clients. I have this exercise in the book called the forgiveness exercise because I've had clients do those exercises when they're feeling like they're completely stuck, their income isn't going anywhere, or they're not having any income is coming in. And one woman in particular, I had her do that because she had a lot of anger toward her family and her father especially. And do you know that after she did that exercise, Daniel, she had to do it over and over again because this was years of deep-seated anger. She actually started to do so well in her business, and she looked like a different person. And so it's interesting that it wasn't even related to money, but in a sense it was because the fact that she was stuck in her income. And so when people identify these emotions, when you're looking at it and you're thinking that's what the emotion is for me, then all of this is an inner journey in that you're going to go inward to look at your beliefs and you're going to look at your emotions and you're going to look at where this is all coming from. Is it stemming from childhood? Like I have people who will tell me that, growing up they had this notion from their family that money doesn't grow on trees, or they can only ever have money if they work really, really hard for it. And so you see people, their behavior patterns throughout adulthood are the same way. And I find that so fascinating because it's almost as if they don't want to break it for the sake of not being respectful to their parents or their family. And so there's a lot of things that we can confront ourselves around letting go of what no longer serves us, around disempowering beliefs, emotions, and past behaviors where we learned something that is no longer serving us.
Beliefs are definitely changeable. They don't have to be fixed for the rest of your life. And it's funny when you were talking about what you were sharing with us there just a moment ago I remember watching an episode of the original television series Dallas. And there was
yes.
yeah, and there was a scene, okay, so you've got Charlene Tilt, you know, the young rich granddaughter and so forth, and she's dating this doctor, and he seems frustrated. I'll never forget this scene. It was such a cool one where he was talking to a friend of his, and he says, I always grew up with the belief that you had to work really hard to get nice things. And I just was like, wow. You know, I mean, there it is right in front of you. And you talk about, and this is important because you have exercises in your book called resetting your money beliefs, resetting your beliefs in general. In other words, let's change these bad boys. If you really want things to change, you know, you've got to change.
Yeah. I love that example, Daniel, because that is so true. You know, that is so true. And actually, I had to confront that myself. I wanted to start believing that money can flow to me and I can be doing what I love and being of service.
And that you're deserving of it.
And ease. Yes. And with grace and ease. Because, you know, my conditioning was around working really, really hard to have, you know, a certain level of income, right? Until I started to figure out, actually, I think I can actually do this with grace and ease and be much happier and healthier. And so mindset is huge. And it's resetting your mindset, as you say, is actually not that difficult to do. In that I call mindset the prelude to action, because our mindset really influences our beliefs and impacts our emotions, and then it affects our decisions and our actions. And to just really talk about how significant mindset is, I'm reminded by the quote by Henry Ford of whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. And so with that, that is kind of the significance of mindset, and how in the book, how one would go about resetting their money mindset is to look at the mindset, the belief that they have at the moment. First of all, you have to figure out whether is that an open mindset or is it a closed mindset. Because if it's a closed mindset, you'll have to do a little bit more work to get it opened. But if it is an open mindset, you're more able to change it quicker. And the interesting thing about mindset is once you change your mindset, your emotion follows right after. Some emotion around it follows right after. And if you've got an open mindset and you say, this is what I'm believing right now, except this is not serving me. So I am going to choose to believe this instead. So let's say somebody has that belief, I can only make good money from working really, really hard. And then they say, but I want to now believe that I can make great money but not have to work as hard, make great money with ease. And so that belief that they want to now adopt, that has to feel expansive for them, and it has to feel exciting in that there's energy there, that's the next level of growth for them. And so what they'll have to do then is look at and ask themselves this question, for me to believe this new belief that I can do great work and make great money with ease, what do I have to now do and believe for this to be true? So then the person can now look at, well, I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to stop working overtime because that's not really necessary. And nobody's asking me to do that. And I'm going to, have more quality time with myself. I'm going to not bring work home anymore, or I'm going to, close the office or stop my business work and actually take time off on the weekends and have holidays. And so, this question, asking oneself this question of what do I have to do and to believe this for this to be true, will open up possibilities. And when options come up and possibilities open up, then it bubbles to your consciousness, to the surface, so then you can now begin to take action on it.
And I think clearly, too, what you've cited is the idea that you need to start paying attention to what that inner voice, perhaps even inner critic, is saying at moments that are new for you, you know.
Yeah.
And, in fact, a fun one, we had a guest years ago. She wrote a book called Loving What Is, and the guest Byron Katie. And it's 4 questions.
I love her, yes.
Yeah, 4 questions that'll change your life. And there's one specific tool that I've used, and it's amazing when you start paying attention to those moments that you step into a reality, let's say a decision or a choice, and that little inner critic pops up. And the first thing was just recognizing that voice is there. It's like the more you pay attention, the softer it gets. But it's real loud when you don't. You just keep blindly following it. You know, I'm sure you know what that feels like. And It was funny because I used just the one simple thing was I just inquired, well, you really, what evidence do you have is that true? Boy, that critic started shutting up real fast because it would be like, well, I really don't have any. Okay, can you find something else to go do then? I'm busy.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's actually really, really true. And we all have an inner critic, and some have a more healthy inner critic, you know, and so the fears and doubts really can get to them. And I do different exercises. I love that exercise that you talked about and Byron Kelly's work. But the other thing that I actually talk about, too, in the book is befriending your inner critic, in that making it kind of an ally instead of kind of, you know, fighting with it, right? Because that fighting makes that fear and doubt critic even louder, doesn't it?
Yeah, in other words, what you're saying is ask it proactive questions, for instance, like you were talking about shame, for instance. Well, I can't charge any more money. You're not that good. Well, first of all, what evidence do you have that I'm not that good? And what can we do together, both of us, so that I can become good enough to make that happen? Do you have any suggestions? It's pretty amazing what happens. And sit down with a piece of paper and write out the dialogue. It's pretty crazy what comes out of you.
Well, yeah, and you know, there's this other one. I really like this too. Is my publisher is New World Library, and the president and founder, Mark Allen, in one of his books, I think it was The Millionaire Course, he talks about making a deal with fears and doubts, where he actually, I love this too, because he made a deal. He says, give me a year. Can you just, you know, calm down and give me a year? And if it doesn't work out, then you can really, then you can come back, you know, and be kind of the told you so. But give me a year and let's work together. And it was actually it's a very kind of interesting and kind of a fun way to befriend your inner critic.
Now, what I'd like to do, Mariflor, is spend the second half of the show talking about 8 principles that you outline in your book that are very important, that I think listeners will just kind of go over each one briefly so that they can transform their relationship with money. And the first principle you talk about is clarity leads to alignment. What does that mean exactly?
So when I'm talking about clarity, I'm talking about really being clear with who you are, what you're aligning with your true desires, and around really valuing yourself, knowing how to trust yourself and know your values, your personal values, and also getting into alignment of what is your mission, what is your purpose, how do you align your worth and value around that. And I talk in the book around being, when we're unaware of our personal values, that sometimes gets in the way of the kind of decisions that we can make, and we're not even really sure if it's good for us. So, you know, your personal values are really what you value in kind of in any situation. You know, some people, a lot of entrepreneurs have a personal value of freedom, for instance, and that's why they've chosen to be entrepreneurs, because they can create their lifestyle and their work around that. And so I talk about also here about clarity in embracing your natural strength, being clear on your life purpose, and also really accepting yourself for who you are, and not backing away from any emotions that you feel uncomfortable with, so you wouldn't be burying them. So when we have clarity, we are so much more powerful because we have the awareness, and then we can get in alignment to what it is that we want to do with our goals, and that can open up the way to the next steps in terms of feeling empowered and being empowered. Now, in the section of clarity, I talk a lot, Daniel, about honoring your self-worth. And I'm just going to read four quick things that is really important in terms of honoring your self-worth and prosperity. And so one of the keys is that your self-worth must rise with your net worth. Key number 2 is you must believe that you can be financially prosperous and wealthy. Number 3 is you must believe that you can ask for more and be unafraid to back this up with action. And number 4 is you must be ready to take advantage of the opportunities you encounter. And so that's just one of the ways that you can get clear on how to value your self-worth. Now, moving on to, are we good to move on to the next one?
Absolutely. I'm following the leader here. You're the expert.
Yeah. Okay. So then we talked a little bit already about that your mindset matters most. And so the next holistic principle, number 2, is around beliefs, and how beliefs is really, again, the prelude to action, and that your money beliefs are actually running your income. And so, you have to really look at those beliefs that can be holding you back. And I'm just going to share a quick story of a woman who had this really interesting belief from childhood, in that she is the youngest and 2 older brothers, and every week their father would give them allowance. And she noticed that her brothers got more than she did. And she asked, why is this? And he said, don't worry, dear. You don't have to make as much money as your brothers, because your brothers are going to be providing for their family, and then you'll get married, and your husband will provide for you. And imagine the mindset that this woman carried with her, and she had the classic profile, if you will, of somebody who under-earned. So they under-earn even though they're so talented and have the skills. And so, when I heard this, I was just blown away, actually. So she had a resistance to making money, because she didn't want to somehow disrespect her father. And she finally started to change this mindset when she was looking for evidence outside in her external world that wasn't working for her anymore.
Right. She could have just went up and said, Dad, you stink.
Yeah.
Why not? Because he did. I thought when you were telling me that story, I thought, boy, what a nasty thing for a parent to say to any child, for that matter.
I know. And of course, we're talking about the timeline. This was not in the last 30 years. This was much before that. But when she told me that story, I thought, oh my goodness, that is a classic example that I use when I talk about my work, is how important it is to be in the frame of mind of allowing yourself to really be empowered. And then I talk also about letting go of resistance, and earlier I talked about a client who I had her do this exercise around forgiveness, because for her it was a very, very big deal to finally release it. And so the third emotion is the third principle is around emotions, because
that's
this
the driving force, baby. That's what makes it all work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is the part where we actually do the work around healing the emotions. So the woman that I just talked about with the under-earning from childhood, this is where the work that she was doing around looking at this exercise that I talk about in the book. And by the way, when people have the book, they can go to another web page on the book's website to download all these exercises that they can do. And one of the exercises that she did was really to move past the emotion that she had around money. So we talked a lot about how angry she was around this belief, and she was actually also angry with herself because she held on to that emotion and belief and honoring it when she really didn't have to anymore. And her father had long since passed, and she was still doing that. And so the thing that she had to do was identify, first of all, here's the emotion. The emotion is anger. And then where does this come from? Well, this comes from my father. And who else are you angry with? Well, I'm angry at my mother. I'm angry at myself. I'm angry at my brothers, because nobody said it was, this wasn't the case. It becomes
very systemic, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And so she had to do a lot of deeper healing work, and it was like peeling the layer of the onion, right? And then it would surface, more would surface. And but finally she did do healing around that, and she's not under earning anymore. The next principle, number 4, is expression. So this is about how we talk about money and what we say about money, because we sometimes really don't realize how powerful our words are, and they can be, because they do have an energetic feel to it of what we put out there in the world. And so this is a real check-in of what it is that you say about yourself and money. And if offering a reframe is really, really good in these instances where you can offer a reframe to yourself. For instance, my clients won't pay me more. So that may be something that you're talking about. Instead, how about reframing it to, my clients happily pay me for helping and empowering them to achieve results. And so that's a totally different, all of a sudden you have an expansive mindset and emotion, because you're saying something that's more positive.
I was going to touch on that, because that's really a very unique thing that you're talking about there, about how you reframe through a question. There was a guest we had on our show. Now, we all have heard of affirmations, right? And you talked about that in your book. Yeah. Now, this guy wrote a book called Affirmations, and he says, rather than affirming something that you want, what you want to do is ask it more in the sense of a question. So, for instance, in the example you just gave, why am I so blessed to be paid so well from people who enjoy my services? You see the difference
I love
there?
That. Yeah.
And because the mind, it's funny, and I remember reading this somewhere, and it was the most entertaining thing. I chewed on this for months thinking about this. The mind is made to solve problems. And if you don't give it anything to solve, it's going to find things for you. And you're not probably going to like those too much.
Yeah. No, it's so true. I mean, if you can shift and ask that question in that kind of a positive reframe right away, that's even better. Because it's really, really so important what we say to ourselves internally, and then we say it externally out into the world and in people that we come in contact with about money. And and then you begin to play it out because you believe it, right?
Right.
And then the next thing is the fifth principle is around purpose. And this is really around knowing your greater why with money. What's deeper reason for wanting to make more of it? And this is where I really tie in the fact that when women are empowered with money, they become difference makers, because research shows that on average, women reinvest 90 cents of every dollar that they make back to family, health, education, and nutrition. And this is also in the developing nations as well. And so there's a lot of power that can come when you are doing your life's purpose work, because you can align that with money, because often, especially if you've got a big purpose and you've got a big mission, often that requires money to help you achieve it.
I know one wonderful example to share is a woman in India who decided to open up her own sort of a loan system to women in India to basically start businesses. And so she would do out microloans for these women.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating to realize she had something like an 85% payback rate. I was just astounded, but it's just like you said, it's amazing how you can do. Most people might think of, well, I'd like a better house or these material things, but if you really shift and go, what impact could I have on the world that would, one, impact me spiritually? Where I can still enjoy the material abundance that I'd like to have, but also see others enjoy their lives and make an impact on them as well. It really shifts why you do things, which is what you're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is, and the fulfillment level on that scope is incredible. It's so fulfilling, and then your life, you're basically using your life in real service to not only your highest potential, but into uplifting humanity, which is just beautiful. Now, the sixth principle is we're talking about improving your habits and actions around money. And so this is really about having your personal integrity and your actions are in alignment around money. So your personal integrity and actions, meaning that, for instance, paying your bills on time, using money for your highest good, and making it a win-win situation like we've been talking all about. Spending and handling money with care. Earning money in an ethical and moral way. And when you have integrity around that and cleaning up any money clutter that you may have, meaning that, do I owe anybody any money and I forgot to pay them, or sometimes, there's family and will give each other money or a loan or something, even if it's that close of a relationship, and especially because it's that close of a relationship, that's where you really want to have integrity around your money, because the way you are with your money will end up reflecting really how you are with everything else that you do. And this is where you want to have integrity with your money, because what you put out, you are going to get back on some level. Maybe not exactly at that moment, but it will come back to you. And that's just the law of the universe.
Yeah, it's also a quantum physics law called the vacuum.
Yeah.
And a fun little scenario I like to share with that is I remember there was a time when I was living on my own that I would get rid of a piece of furniture. And somehow, a year later, where did that couch come from? I don't remember buying it, but somehow that spot just filled itself. And money's exactly the same way. Allow it to be released. We're not talking about being irresponsible. I mean, enjoy it. That's a big thing. Can you enjoy spending money? But when you let it go, then you're opening that space for more. So. Yeah.
Well, I love that example, Daniel. And, nature abhors empty space,
vacuum.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it is. Nature abhors a vacuum. And and that's exactly what happens. Like I always say to people, if you are, we have to have money in flow. To actually hoard money is hoarding energy as well, because you're not in flow. And that's what money is meant to be. And there are ebbs and flows with money. Money will come in and money will go out. And as entrepreneurs, that ebb could be higher on one end and lower on another end. But you have to be okay with that happening, right? Because otherwise you're going to be on this merry roller coaster with your emotions of money all the time. And so you have to go with the flow. And then I talk about also in money actions is, what if you made money your best friend? How would you treat money? Would you talk about it in a bad way? Would you just forget about it, that it's there? Would you use it for its highest good? And so, I mean, people laugh about that because they say, I've never read anything where people are telling me to be a best friend with money, right? But it's kind of just a fun way for me to lighten up what could be like a tricky topic for a lot of people.
And that's empowering your growth. That's what we're talking about here?
Yes.
Okay.
No, we're still in the.
Improve your money habits. Okay.
Yeah, we're still in the money habits, and then we're now talking about your environment. Your environment is about empowering your growth. That's the seventh principle, because it is so important. That statement that Brian Tracy, I believe it was, who said that you are the sum of all of the 5 people that you most spend time with. And so it is so important, especially if you are an entrepreneur. You want to, anybody actually, you want to really surround yourself with success-minded people are going to help take you higher, right. Higher to your fullest potential and higher to your mission. And then in this section, I also talk about the different environments that there are, that we may not think about it. So we have a psychological environment, i.e. your mindset. We've got an emotional environment, your feelings. And then there's a spiritual environment of the fact that I talk about this in the book, that money is part of your spiritual purpose. Because if you use it for the highest good and you use it as a tool to be a force for good, it's pretty incredible of the spiritual growth that will happen within you.
Now, Mara, before you continue, let's go ahead and touch on this, because I think there's sometimes confusion with a lot of people when you say using money for the highest good as being charitable, but that's not really what you're talking about, is it?
Well, it is on some level, yes, but also using money in a way that is going to not just be charitable, but that it's really strategic, that in that it is fulfilling your highest purpose as well. And so you're using it as the tool to, if you've got a big platform, for instance, you have to infuse money in that, to use that as a tool to put forward your mission and your platform. And so, of course, there's always the giving back as well, but it's also around using it for your highest good, in that, for instance, you may need to do more training. You may need to work with others in that to fulfill the purpose that you're trying to do, or the goal that you're trying to reach. And so it becomes really a form of very strategic way in using money, not only for your highest good, but that it will create some sort of a ripple effect, because you are either investing in yourself, you're investing in your business, or you're putting money in flow in the world, and it will come back to you. So it's, again, the circle and flow of abundance.
Now, the last one, principle number 8, is focus on achieving results. I mean, that's why we're doing a lot of this, right?
Yeah. I talk about keeping your eyes on the prize. The prize is because of the fact that, and you could actually use this for any goal that you have, is that, and not just financially, but of course we're talking about it in the context of having a financial goal. And so you want to really have scheduled time to focus on the work that you do and on your goal. And one of the things it's important to understand is what we focus on grows. So if we're focusing on prosperity goals or increasing our abundance, we're going to begin to, as we keep focusing on that, we're going to begin to see more momentum around that. And again, decluttering and clearing away any things that will take you out of your focus, that will take you out of your energy, and really creating the best environment for you to thrive, and then also practicing self-care. Because usually what ends up happening with women is we'll get so involved in something and then we just do that and we forget to take care of ourselves because we got to take care of everybody else. So that's a practice that I call being self-fulfilled rather than being selfish, because you're so much better when everything is so much better when you're at your best as well. And so and in that section, really talking about ways to using the SMART goal, having making your goal specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and of course time-based. And all of this is meant to apply a holistic approach.
It's also wonderful, and I love the way you've outlined all of this, especially as you said, it's a book certainly for women, but men, obviously, when you've been listening to this, listeners out there, you can see how it can benefit you quite a bit, because after all, as I said in the beginning of the program, we were all gifted with the same tools. The question is, how are you going to use them? And certainly if somebody else can be successful in an area, well, so can you.
Exactly.
It really gets that simple, doesn't it?
It does. And by me writing this book, I'm really also unlocking a lot of the learnings that I've had throughout my own journey and learning from masters of people who have had a lot of success and or a lot of wealth and a lot of good that they've done. And so if these people can do it, if I can do it, you can do it too. We're not any more special,
Right. Kind of like, we were all born with a soul. God gives you everything you need. The question is, what are you going to do with all of it? And that's the beauty of it. And discovering them special gifts that you were born with that are unique to only you. The more you share those with the world, boy, it's amazing when you light that light that is you, what exactly happens. And it doesn't have to be all about wealth. I mean, there's so many ways to look at abundance. I give a good example of the Dalai Lama, for instance. This isn't a guy that's got a stockpile of cash, but I don't see this guy having trouble getting where he needs to go, having a place to sleep, and certainly food to eat.
Nope. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and he travels first class too, right? And
Absolutely.
So this is an absolutely great example, and of that, and that we all have so much capacity for our highest potential and uplifting humanity, and now is the time. The very first sentence in the book is, there are no coincidences. And the very fact that somebody is listening to us right now or hearing us later is a sign that
Absolutely.
It's their time.
And just like Robert Kiyosaki, best-selling author of the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series, and this is a really wonderful way to look at the whole thing. He says, just think of money this way. Money is just an idea. And that's really true. So how are you going to apply that idea?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, Mariflora, it's certainly been a pleasure to have you here on the program. My last question for you before we give people direction to go on to websites, which is where I'm at right now, is that really your swimming pool?
What's really my swimming pool, sorry?
Is that really your swimming pool you're standing in front of on your website?
Oh!
Because if that's where you hold money manifestation retreats, man, forget the book. Just go to her swimming pool.
That's so funny. funny. No, you know what that is? I was actually in a retreat at a spa at the Ritz, and whatever that day was, I had the whole place to myself.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there you go.
So I had to get the people there. I said, you have to take a picture of me because nobody is here.
That's mine. And who knows, one day it could be. You never know.
Yeah.
So a website, people can find out more about your work, how they can get money manifestation miracles, things like that.
Yes. They can go to my website at maryflor.co. That's meriflor.co. And there is all the information of my work, and there's a link there where you can get the book. And the book is widely available in bookstores and online. And be sure for anybody who gets the book, come back to the book website at moneymanifestationandmiracles.com, because there's a gift waiting for you there, and it's an audio download where I talk about the power of practicing gratitude.
Yeah, that's the big one right there, because the more gratitude you have, the more you have to be grateful for, and there's that vacuum again. That's amazing how that works.
Exactly. It's beautiful.
Thank you so much for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Thank you so much, Daniel. I really enjoyed our time and our connection. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful.
Absolutely. Thank you. We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for taking the time to join us. You can also discover more at beyond50radio.com. That is the number 50. We'll have some links up there for Mara Flor's book, so you can discover how you can go about getting that, or maybe even deciding whether or not you want to engage in your coaching services, get things moving along for yourself. That is beyond50radio.com, the number 50. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for joining us. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.